Hello, good morning. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is in your part of the world. Let me just pop out the chat window here so I can see everybody. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Rosa and Paolo and Vivek and Maxime and Natty and Dr. Grigorov. It's hard for me to say. Mr. Singh, Vinay, Arya. Who else is here? Who else do we have here? Asala, Milena, JB, Nolofer, Leo, Anwar, Ezquiel. Am I even saying that right? Is that even close? Amelie, I am positive. Well, thank you. That's a very positive statement. Kulwinder, Arjang. Ooh, 5:30 p.m. in Turkey now. It is 7:30 a.m. Oh, shucks, Rosa, thank you. It is 7:30 a.m. here in the Northside Studios in beautiful Spokane, Washington. Venci, I'll just call you Venci. Am I saying right? Is it Venci, like an S sound, or Venci with more of a CH sound? Sometimes I need phonetic help with some of your names. Good morning, Diary, or afternoon, or evening. Wilson, hi. Hello, everybody. If I ever mispronounce your name, just put the phonetic spelling, how it should be phonetically pronounced. I'll try to remember it. Oh my gosh, 8:30 p.m. You guys are almost ready for your next day, and my day's just beginning. Hi, Denise. Hi, Alosh. This morning I ate in the studio because it is now I won't say it's illegal. It's a driving offense now where I live that if a police officer catches you eating or drinking or using your cell phone in the car, you can get a ticket. So if you are seen using your phone or eating, or I guess drinking excessively, taking a sip of something is okay, you can get fined. So usually in the morning, sometimes I have to go through a drive-through to pick up food because it's early and I need breakfast, but I can no longer eat it in my car, which I usually did. I had to eat it in the studio today. So I have to be careful. If I'm ever late for one of these classes, is because I was pulled over for eating while driving at the same time. New laws. Okay. Are you guys ready? Yeah, I should. You're right, Leo. I should ride a bicycle and eat on my bicycle. Okay. Nora. Good morning to you, Nora. I can eat. I can eat while teaching you at the same time. It's hard to teach if my mouth is full. It would be hard to teach if my mouth were full. Okay, let's put up the lesson on the screen on the background. There it is. I'll blow it up just a little bit so it's easier to see. I shared the class notes. I'll share them one more time. Oh yeah, I see you guys are talking about the new class. There will be a new Smrt class today with Kareem at, what time is it? 15 o'clock? Is that 3 o'clock? What time is it? But there is a new Smrt Live class today with Kareem. Pay attention to the YouTube channel page. Okay, maybe next time I'll eat. I'll just eat on camera. It feels impolite, and maybe I'll do that. 22 Greenwich Mean Time. 22 Greenwich Mean Time. And this is, what time is this? I'm at 15:30 Greenwich Mean Time. Boy, it's hard. How come time is so hard? For the new students in the chat room, I'll share the link to the class notes one more time. If you're on your computer, you can open that up and see the notes that I'll have in the background here. But first, I always talk about the links. If you have any questions about the Smrt Live classes, you can contact Zach at smartenglish.com. No A in Smrt English, especially about subscribing to Smrt Live. And there are a couple pages you can click on there and see the classes available at these two links. If you haven't joined our Facebook group yet, you can do so at Learn English on Facebook with Smrt. Of course, you are already on the YouTube channel if you're joining me live in the chat room. If not, if you're watching this later or you're not sure, the landing page to see all the archived videos, you can follow this link here to the YouTube channel. And finally, Smrt Live does have a Facebook. There is another Facebook page. If you haven't joined that, please do so at your own leisure when you have time. Okay. So today we're going to keep on talking about punctuation. A couple weeks ago we covered comma usage, and there were a lot of rules. As you saw, there were a lot of rules. It was like a 2-hour class, almost a 2-hour class. So yeah, punctuation can be very, very tricky because there are so many rules. I'm going to cover some other punctuation marks today, and this is not even all of them. Maybe we'll have to continue this again into the future. Sometimes I forget how many rules there are to punctuation. Even when we talk about punctuation rules, it's almost impossible within a lesson to talk about all the uses. I've included some vocabulary because I might be using them today. I will especially be using independent clause. I'll be using this term a lot. An independent clause is a group of words with a subject-verb agreement and can have a full stop at the end. If you want to think of an independent clause as a full sentence, that's a good place to start, although it may have a dependent clause connected to it, or it may be two independent clauses together. Just remember, you need an independent clause, at least one, before you can put a period. You can put that full stop period. Okay, yeah, I know sometimes punctuation can be a headache. It's not the funnest topic, that's for sure, but it's important in writing. Of course, punctuation is important in writing. So, Rosa, it's okay if any of you haven't seen the comma punctuation one, that's okay. It's okay you hadn't seen the comma one. Okay, let's get started. Again, for those people who are new joining us today, welcome. If anytime you want to try a sentence or try to use one of these punctuations in your example, I know as I'm teaching and as I'm talking, a lot of the students in the chat room want to try it and they just start writing examples. I will use those examples and put them in the class notes. So feel free to try your own examples. And I'll keep an eye out on the chat room, and if there's anything I see that looks good, I will include it in the class notes. Okay, exclamation point is probably often an overused punctuation, especially in texting. It's an emotional punctuation mark. It's used to express exasperation. Exasperation is kind of like when you're exhausted and surprised at the same time. You are out of energy and you're a little angry and tired. This is called exasperation. Many times parents feel exasperation because of their children and how much energy their children have. Astonishment, which is like great surprise, and of course just surprise. Or we can use exclamation points to give a warning. So you might see it at the end of single words, like just the word help. when you're shouting out for help, somebody needs help. Or if you're surprised about something, that's unbelievable. So it can come at the end of a full sentence expressing surprise, astonishment, exasperation. Sometimes, though, we just use one word, like unbelievable. Warnings, when you see somebody's in danger, you might say, get out, or look out. Get out, of course, is leave fast. Look out is you're about to be hit by something, or something is moving in your direction at a fast speed. Okay, that's like that, like that. Paolo, I'll use that one. That's a warning. Stay away. And if you speak these, should you raise your voice? You should. If you ever see this in writing and you want to speak something using an exclamation mark, should you say it loudly? You should. You should. It's an indication to say something loudly. Rosa, I'm going to correct your punctuation in the middle, but the one at the end is right. You can use it like that. I use it a lot. Maybe I'm wrong. It usually shows emotion, and we reflect that emotion by elevating our voice when we read something with an exclamation mark. Yeah, we have a lot of them coming in. Yeah, good. Fabulous. Leo, of course, another warning that's just like look out is watch out. Arzang, hurry up. I am positive. Amazing. Sounds like you guys get awesome. No loafer, that's a good one. Awesome. If you're very impressed by something. Asala, yeah. Something you might hear from the police. Put your hands up. They're yelling an order at you. So, Mr. Singh, that's true. Listen up. I always say that to my students in the classroom. Natty, it's interesting you put the 3 exclamation marks. I'm going to go down to the bottom. At the bottom, I do have the 3 exclamation marks. This is very informal, but it's used a lot in social networking. You might see it a lot on social posts. It is to show a lot. It's kind of emphasis, showing a lot of energy, enthusiasm, excitement. It works well in social networks. It's not good for formal writing. It's not good for academic writing, but you're texting a friend, it's okay. So you will see it. You will see 3 or even more exclamation points after some of these phrases, especially on social networks. I notice you guys have given me a lot of adjectives. Often, yeah, these adjectives, when we're giving positive reinforcement to somebody, we'll use a very positive adjective with an exclamation mark at the end. Terrific, awesome, fantastic, fabulous, amazing, incredible. So extremely positive adjectives are often followed by exclamation marks. Now, in academic writing, should you use these a lot? No. In academic writing, you should not use exclamation points a lot. Do not overuse them. In an essay, there are probably very few reasons you would need an exclamation point. Now, it may come up. You may find that you are quoting something and it includes an exclamation point. But you yourself, as the writer, will not find a lot of need for exclamation points in academic writing. That's a good one too. Marvelous. Steve, I noticed you wrote, "What a day, what a day." So when we have those phrases that begin with a question word and then we have an exclamation point at the end, in writing it's sometimes hard to tell what the writer might mean because it can be very sincere or it can be very sarcastic. It can be used for humor. So when we have one of those expressions that begins with a question word like what a beautiful day. If you wake up, you open the curtains, you open the door, you see the sun out, and you say something like, "What a beautiful day." That's sincere. You're being sincere if it is a beautiful day. If it's raining out, snowing out, if there's a storm, you open the door and you say, "What a beautiful day." It's sarcastic. It's sarcastic. And so this exclamation point, sometimes with these statements, it's hard to tell sometimes if the writer is being sincere or sarcastic. Again, especially on social networking. Yeah, when we use it a lot with the weather, what a day, what a beautiful day, what weather. Oh, you guys, what a nice day. You guys have some good adjectives up here. Good examples so far. I can't use all these examples, guys, but excellent examples so far. Again, in writing, if you see something like, "You're so smart," it's kind of hard to tell, are they being sincere or are they being sarcastic? If you did something or said something very smart and somebody responds with, "You're so smart," probably they're sincere. If you did or said something stupid and they say that, they're probably being sarcastic. So sometimes you have to read the situation. But again, in writing, it's very, very hard to read sometimes what the person means. And with these question words, usually the question word is what. What? Usually we say, "What a nice day out," something like that. If we used how, it would be something like, "How did the cat get on the roof?" We can put these exclamation points instead of a question mark on question sentences if the surprise is greater than the question. And it might be something called a rhetorical question, meaning you don't really want an answer. You're using the question form to show surprise or to show what you're thinking in words, but you're not really expecting anybody to answer you. So if you're surprised that the cat's on the roof and you say, "How did the cat get on the roof?" you're not looking for an answer from anybody around you or an answer from the cat in that meaning. So, Asala, if you say, "What a party! I had a blast." Obviously, you're being sincere. I think I would read that as being sincere. Okay. So as I mentioned before, you can use an exclamation point to replace a question mark, especially for surprise. Again, this is showing surprise. "They're getting married." So this is a little hard to read. It could either be a question or a statement of surprise. Oftentimes when we see this in writing, it's hard to tell what the writer meant, so we have to hear it sometimes. To know if it's a question or a statement of surprise, we'd have to hear the intonation. So if somebody said, "They're getting married," obviously that up tone at the end would show a question. But if somebody said, "They're getting married," like with excitement and surprise and more of a flat intonation or a regular intonation, no up or down at the end, it's probably surprise. Again, we can use an exclamation point instead of a question mark to emphasize surprise rather than a question that we want an answer to. How'd you get up there? Surprise. We aren't looking for an answer for a question. You'll see this in writing sometimes. It's a question mark and an exclamation mark together. There's a name for that. It's called an interrobang. And there's a specific character for it. You might have to bring up a menu to find it. It's a question mark, and I couldn't find it. It's a question mark and an exclamation mark put together. Most writers will just put two punctuation marks at the end separately to show a surprise question. This is also kind of informal. The surprise question is kind of informal. Usually you don't want to double up on your full stop, your end stop punctuations like periods, question marks, or exclamation marks. You don't want to double up punctuation at the end. So this is extremely informal. I just want you to know you will see it sometimes in writing, especially popular writing, maybe in a magazine or online. You might see this, the surprise question. The surprise question. Yeah, like that, Mr. Singh. How did you do it? A surprise question. We can't believe it. How did you do it? I think mostly you will see it, again, in magazines, on social networks. That's probably where you'll see it most. Is it a stylistic style to write both question marks at the end? Sometimes people will double up question marks. That's, again, more social networking thing, informal things. Yeah, good, Rosa. That's another one. Vivek, you have funny sentences. I don't know how many of them I'm going to use, but you're making me laugh right now. How is that possible? Why on earth did you do that? Why on earth is a good expression of surprise as well. If you want to show your surprise, you can always start with the phrase, why on earth? Why on earth did you do that? Oh, I am positive you found the interrobang. Cool. I'm going to put that up there. So this is what it looks like. Yeah, it's that beginning one. So this is a real interrobang, and it's used to show a surprise question. Can you see that down there? I know it's very, very small. You can use that for the surprise question. There is a character for it. Again, use it in your own writing, especially academic writing. Use it very, very sparingly. Use it only a few times. Use it seldomly. Don't rely on the exclamation mark or the interrobang. I would say if you feel like you must, like for example, you present a surprising fact in your essay, a fact that you find surprising and you think your reader might also find surprising, you might want to use an exclamation point for that. Limit yourself. I would say for an academic essay, no more than one exclamation point. I know it's not math. You can't put a number like that on it. I'm just really encouraging you, don't use too many. Use them wisely when you have to use them. It's an emotional punctuation, so use it sparingly. If you are writing to a friend, I'd say use it a lot. For letters, for social networking, the exclamation point has it's been given new life. People use it a lot, probably too much, but it's a good way. It's kind of it's almost an emoji. It's a shorthand for surprise, excitement, astonishment. Okay. In quotation marks. So when you have an end punctuation like an exclamation point, and you're showing words that somebody said, like instead of somebody saying something, if they yell something loud, "Get out!" James yelled. The exclamation point goes inside the quotation marks, and that's the only one you need. That's the only punctuation you need. You don't need a comma here. If you start with James yelled, then you need a comma, then you give the words, and punctuation will go inside the quotation marks. So if you have an exclamation point inside quotation marks, keep it inside the quotation marks, always. Does the order matter? Always punctuation at the end. Always punctuation at the end. Natty, let's look at your statement. So Natty, you used some quotation marks. Even the please is part of the quotation. So these quotation marks will contain everything, including the last word and the exclamation point. Leave me alone. You use a comma to break off the word please. Leave me alone, please. Let's go to the next one. Oh, I am positive. Okay. So we mentioned the interrobang. When do you use it? You use it for a question of surprise. So here I showed you could just use a exclamation point, and that's fine. You just need a single one to show surprise. But if people want to emphasize that it's both surprise and a question, like you really can't believe something, that's when you use the interrobang. They're getting married? They voted for who? You saw who at the laundromat? So it's, a surprise. You are surprised and you have to ask a question. You can't believe it. You can't believe what you're seeing or hearing. So, yeah, it's for things like that. It doesn't come up a lot. But just in case you see it, just in case you should ever happen to see it. Here's one from Paolo. Do the laundry, my mom yelled. And that's correct. The exclamation point goes inside the quotation mark. And of course, the mom is saying it very loudly. She wants that laundry done. Okay. Let's move on to the question mark. I think you guys have it. Again, if you have any questions, put it in the chat room. I'll take a look at it and try to address it. Let's go on to the question mark itself. So, as you know, question marks, of course, are used for direct questions, which I think is easy. It's probably something you've mastered. It's something you learned very early on in English, like, what are you doing later tonight? So, question marks are direct questions. Where this gets tricky, where a mistake might be made, remember, no question mark for indirect questions. I was wondering what you were doing later tonight. That's not a question, that's a statement. It gets a period. It's using the word wondering. So you're showing the question in a word, wondering. But you say it as a statement. It doesn't begin with a question word, doesn't begin with an auxiliary verb, begins with a subject and verb. That's going to be a statement. So remember, indirect questions do not get question marks. Reported speech does not get question marks. Daniel asked Maria what she was doing later that night. By using this verb asked, we're showing that a question was asked, but we're reporting that a question was asked. It's not the actual question. So again, no question mark. Only for direct questions will you use the question mark. Does that make sense? Not for indirect questions, not for reported speech. That's question marks. Natty, you have a direct question here. Whose shoes? And we'll need a little bit more. And the question word whose is W-H-O-S-E. Whose shoes? And then we're going to need an auxiliary. Whose shoes are in your room? That's a direct question. Begins with a question word, so we'll need to end with that question mark. And it's somebody looking for an answer. Use that question mark for statements, for direct questions that are looking for answers, that seek an answer, that need an answer. Okay. Leo, again, I love your guys' example sentences. I always can't use them all. I wish I could use them all. But very good. Leo, Vivek, keep up the good work. That's all I'll say. Question tags. Question tags, when we're looking to confirm an answer, we think we have the right information, but we want agreement. We're looking for agreement or confirmation from somebody that we're right. So it's hot out, isn't it? A question tag, I also talked about this during the comma punctuation lesson. Question tags always get commas, It's hot out, isn't it? You speak Latin, don't you? You're Jacob, aren't you? You don't support him, do you? So before the auxiliary in the question tag at the end, remember to put a comma, but always end with the question mark. Are there any special rules to use exclamation? Brat asks. No real special rules to use exclamation. Just in formal academic writing, don't use a lot of exclamation points. In informal writing, you can use a lot of exclamation points. Again, to show surprise, excitement, astonishment. Natty, you have a question tag here. You remember my birthday, don't you? Just confirming that somebody might not remember your birthday. You're confirming that. Vivek, this is a direct question. Who has taken my white shirt? I am positive that's a direct question. And it needs an auxiliary. What are you going to eat tonight? What are you going to eat tonight? Again, these are questions looking for answers, seeking answers. Paolo, you have a question tag. You turn on the air conditioner, don't you? You turn on the air conditioner, don't you? Okay, let's move on. Same thing. When you use a question mark with quotation marks, same thing as when you use an exclamation point with quotation marks. It goes inside. It goes inside. Question mark goes inside. Where are we going? Henry asked. Henry asked, comma. Where are we going? So if you begin with the speaker and the word, the verb, the speaking verb, put a comma afterwards and then the quotation. Question mark goes inside the end quotation mark. If you begin with the quotation, you don't need a comma. Where are we going? Henry asked. And quotation, or the question mark goes inside the quotation marks. Rosa, you have use of quotation, but it's a exclamation. Stop snoring, please, I told my husband. I can't sleep. So you start with the quotation, exclamation point inside the quotation, which is good. Then the speaker and the speaking verb and who they're speaking to, and then a comma, and then they continue talking. That's correct. All correct use of punctuation. Correct use of quotation marks, end punctuation, comma, another quotation, and end quotation. Good job. All of that is correct. Cindy, you wrote, "It's not on my feet," he said sadly. I don't know what's not on his feet. Shoes, socks? Bailo, you wrote a question tag. So, and this is kind of how question tags work. You start with the subject. You have a auxiliary in the first part. So it'd be you are hungry, then a comma, and then you repeat. Repeat that auxiliary. You are hungry, aren't you? But it's going to be the negative form. So if this is a positive auxiliary, after the comma, you're going to have the negative form of the auxiliary. You are hungry, aren't you? Aren't you hungry? Okay, I'd love to see more of your examples. We got to continue. Okay, let's just talk about the normal old period now. So exclamation point, question mark, period are the full stops. Those are our three full stops. Those are the strongest punctuation. Just means you're done. You're done with that sentence. You're done with that word. You're done with that phrase. You're moving on. So question mark, exclamation point, period are strong full stops. So of course, because we talked about question marks, sometimes periods can replace a question mark, but this is only for formal written questions. And they're more like orders. You want somebody to do something, but you want to ask in a nice way. If you're writing these formally, you will replace the question mark with a period. So for example, would you please send this report to the name indicated on the envelope? Now it sounds like a question because we're beginning with that, we're beginning with the modal, would, and then we put the subject, would you. So it sounds like a question, but because this is a formal written order, you actually want somebody to do this, it actually ends in a sentence. And this is something special to writing. This is formal written requests, orders, commands. It sounds like a question. You're really not asking the question. You want them to do it. So if you ever see this from your boss, he's just not asking you. It's just a polite way to request something, to order something. Of course, at the end of a sentence, if you have a full sentence and it's not a question and you're not showing surprise, you just use a period. The report contains 3 new proposals for possible future projects. Ends. It's an independent clause and it's done. We have subject, the report, verb, contains, and then the object, what it contains, and then you can just end the sentence there. If you have a dependent clause, something with a linking word, like although the board members couldn't agree, comma, we have included several solutions in the notes, period. So if you have a dependent clause attached to an independent clause, once you are done with that independent clause, you can end the sentence. Subject, we, verb, have included. Subject, verb agreement, done. You can even have a dependent clause and 2 independent clauses. And that's probably the most you ever want in a sentence. If you start packing on more pieces of a sentence beyond a dependent clause and two independent clauses, it's going to get very tricky, and your sentence, you might lose control of your sentence. So that's about as much as you ever want to try to pack into one sentence. Because it's raining, we've decided to cancel the picnic, and Paula has volunteered to call in an order for pizza. A sentence, one complete sentence, before you put that period, it needs an independent clause. It can have a dependent clause. It can even have a dependent clause and two independent clauses, but then you probably want to stop. It can have all sorts of phrases in there. And yes, you can make a list and pack on a lot of independent clauses or even a lot of dependent clauses, but that gets very, very tricky. Always look to limit your sentences. Say what you need to say, then use that period and go on to the next sentence. You want the let's see, the link to the class notes. I'll share that one more time. If you're just joining us now, we are talking punctuation, the wonderful and exciting world of punctuation in writing. We just talked about the period. You guys all know the period. Remember, you can also use the period for abbreviations. Let's look at this sentence. He was the CEO of Apple Inc. And I have a couple abbreviations here. I have CEO and I have Inc., short for Incorporated. And this is short for Chief, Chief, not Engineering Officer. Help me out, guys. What's the E in CEO? Chief Executive Officer. Notice, though, I didn't put the periods after CEO, just after the Inc., just after the Incorporated. So the idea is, executive, okay, good. Chief Executive Officer. If an acronym or an abbreviation, if a shorter form of a word or many words put together, if the convention is to use capital letters, uppercase letters, big letters, to write it, like FBI, something like that, CEO. If you always see it in caps, don't use the periods. If it uses lowercase letters, small letters, like Inc. does, big I, small n, small c, then it uses the period for the abbreviation. If you end your sentence with abbreviation, only one period. You don't put a period for the abbreviation and then a period for the full stop end sentence. You just need one. And that period will serve both functions. It will abbreviate the word and it will end the sentence. Hopefully that makes sense. Apple Inc. is looking for a new CEO. Obviously, if your abbreviation is in the middle of your sentence, still use the period, abbreviate that word, and then you'll need a full stop at the end. I woke up at 6 a.m. Again, we need periods after AM, anti-meridian, but you don't need an additional period. You just need one period at the end. Here is another abbreviated sentence. Abood will arrive Friday, January 4th. Both the words Friday and January have been abbreviated, so a period after each one. And because we use commas in dates to separate day of the week with the day, I included the comma. So Friday is abbreviated, period, comma. January is abbreviated, period. And then after the 4, the end stop, the full stop. Whew. It's a lot. So yeah, Arzang, you've given some examples. So for example, uppercase, DVD, no periods, because you usually see it in big form. But doctor, for a title, it's abbreviated with a smaller case letter, lowercase letter. So it uses a period. So that's what you kind of have to look for. That's what you kind of have to look for. Where it gets tricky is sometimes for like I'm trying to think for degrees. Like a degree in dentistry is called a DDS. So you might see a dentist, and after his name he has DDS, and it's usually all in caps. But sometimes you will see the periods afterwards. For graduate degrees, this is where it gets tricky. Sometimes you see the periods, sometimes not. And it seems to be kind of a stylistic thing. Always, if you use periods, that's going to be safer. But if you see somebody else use like a degree, and they don't use the periods, and you want to follow that style, you can follow that style as well. Victor, that's a good question. For time of day, don't we sometimes see I woke up at 6 a.m.? Don't we see sometimes the capitals? Yeah. If you capitalize it, obviously the normal convention is to not use periods with the big AM. You will see this, I think, formally for most stylistic guides. I think the smaller case AM and PM is what's recommended. But in writing, will you see the uppercase letters? You will, a lot of times in writing. And again, it seems to be sometimes a stylistic thing. I think more formally, the lowercase with the periods is the most formally correct form for time. Yes, of course we use periods after titles, Diary, like Doctor or Mr., Mr., Professor, Mrs. I think Ms. is a weird one. Sometimes uses a period, sometimes does not. So yes, of course, for titles. It's a good question. Yes, titles we use periods. Okay, let's see. In numbers, of course, if you write out a number, use the period if it needs a period. So for example, for money, for price, that will cost $10.43. Please separate the dollar amount from the cents amount with a period. Your suitcase weighs 14.17 pounds, and I abbreviated pounds, LBS. Yeah, if you have a decimal or a money amount and you write it out in the number form, please include the periods. The next one is ellipses, the 3 periods. We use these for unfinished thoughts. Ellipses are always for omitting things. When you want to omit something from your writing, if you want to show that something has been deleted, use ellipses. This is more informal writing. I wonder if ... Oh, never mind. Here it means the thought is unfinished. The person decided not to finish their words. Sometimes we want to show that in writing. The only way to show purposely that words have been left out is by using the ellipses, the 3 dots. Natty, that's right. Some currencies use a comma instead of a period. For America, we always use the period. We don't use commas in our currency unless like it's a huge number. Of course, like if we had... If we had something like this, what is that? $100,100.01. We use the commas to break off 3 like 100s from 1,000s, 100,000s from millions, and so forth, so on and so forth, to break up 3 numbers, row of 3 numbers. Oh, Colwinder, you brought up like weights, like pounds and kilograms. Here's something where again you might see some stylistic difference. So it's easy if it comes at the end of the sentence, because you know you need a period, you can put it somewhere else. But in the middle, sometimes you'll see measurements like pounds and kilograms without the period. Sometimes you'll see them with the period. Again, probably the most formal, correct way to show that it is an abbreviation is to use the period. But oftentimes in your writing, you'll see the period removed. This usually happens when an abbreviation is used so much, even if it uses lowercase letters. An abbreviation is used so much, it's standardly known. Everybody knows what it means. 5 kilogram bag was put on the plane. So oftentimes you'll see the omission of the abbreviation period. Again, formally, it's probably best, and in most style guides recommended, that you use a period. For very, very commonly used standards abbreviations, you will often see it without the period. In your writing, if you wrote something for the classroom, if you wrote an academic paper, if you wrote a formal paper, and you didn't put a period after kilograms, I would be very surprised if the teacher took off points for that. Rose, I'm going to have to look up the difference between MLA and APA, because yes, there is a difference between commas and periods, and it depends. It depends on what you are citing, where you are citing it. So, I mean, we can do a future lesson on citation, MLA and APA citation, because they do differ. They are different. LBS, yeah, LBS is pounds. This is our, where is that? I know this is strange. This is our abbreviation for pounds, but not like the British money. It's for weight, for our American standardized weight. We measure things in pounds, and the abbreviation for pounds is LBS. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. Why? I don't know. But that's our abbreviation for it. Oh, man. I guess that's why you're studying English, right? It is kind of crazy. So ellipses. So this is where ellipses come in handy. If you're writing an academic paper and you use a quotation, you pull a quotation from a book and you want to use it in your writing, but you don't want to use the full quote. You want to omit some of the words. You show ellipses to show that you have purposely deleted some of the author's words. Thoreau argues that by simplifying one's life, the laws of the universe will appear less complex. So here, Henry David Thoreau, I didn't use his full quotation. I ended to show that this is not the end of the actual quotation. It's just the information I needed. I took what I wanted. I didn't use all the words. I show ellipses to show omission. ... If it comes at the end, I need another dot. I need 4 dots. And that's an ellipses and a period. And an ellipses with a period will appear as 4 dots. If I take it out and then put in an in-text citation where I got it from, and this would be MLA citation, I put the page number and then the period goes after the page number. If I take out a chunk of the quotation from the middle and then continue with a later part, I'll put the ellipses in the middle. Thoreau believes that if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will live with the license of a higher order of beings. So I took out a piece there. It still makes sense, so grammatically makes sense to continue it. It's all his quote. I just took out a middle piece. And to show that you have omitted something, when you remove something from somebody else's words, that's where you use the ellipses. So it is very, very helpful in citation. So I'll do a future lesson on citation to talk more about citation. Let's see. Next, semicolon. use semicolon between independent clauses. If you don't use a conjunction like a fanboys, like and, but, or, so, seniors can eat lunch off campus, semicolon. All other students must eat lunch on campus. These are two independent clauses. If I wanted, I could make them separate sentences, two separate sentences, but I've decided they are closely enough related that I'm going to use a semicolon. It can break two independent clauses, but it's softer than a period, and it shows that these two independent clauses are related. The information in these two independent clauses are related. Victor, now you're asking about time. Would it be better to say 6:30? Yeah, it would be more correct 6:30 p.m. Use the colon. And we'll get to that in a second. We'll get to the colon. With a transition word like consequently, however, moreover, nevertheless, therefore. Heavy snow continues to fall at the airport, semicolon, consequently, comma, all flights have been grounded. So if you have one of these transition words, break it with a semicolon on one side and a comma on the other. Now here's a tricky one. Enlists with internal commas. Rosa, you're asking independent clauses? Yeah, if they have a relationship, if these two independent clauses have a relationship, like cause and effect, or true for this, but not true for this, or exception, rule. If there's a relationship between the two independent clauses, you can use a semicolon instead of a period to show that there is a relationship, to show there's a link. Etc. That's a good question, Rosa. The abbreviation etc. It used to use, you'd always see etc. followed by 3 dots. Now, etc. is just followed by a single period. It's an abbreviation of the word etc. So it just needs one period. In writing, you might see it like this. Standard grocery items are milk, eggs, cheese, bread, etc. And I would need, again, a fourth. So, oftentimes in writing, you'll see it incorrect. You'll just see the 3 dots. You won't even see the end period. You just see there's 3 dots, etc. It's kind of showing that, okay, I've given you enough examples that you can think of a lot more examples. It's almost like a trailing off thought. It's almost like this first example of ellipses I gave. This one. It's almost like this, unfinished thought. This kind of etc. stands for an unfinished thought, and I think that's why people put 3 periods. But now standard use is just to use 1 period after etc. And so on. Yeah, Adrian, and so on is it a period of time? Yeah. And no, so on would be like, it could be more time, but it could be more examples. Let's see, what else? Where were we? Oh, semicolon. Last one for semicolon, lists with internal commas. Okay, if you have a list and there are commas inside your items of the list, you need to break the list with semicolons. And I know that's complicated. If you have a list and inside that list you are already using commas, you can't break the items in a list with a comma anymore. Now you have to use a semicolon. So for example, the new store will have groceries on the lower level. Okay, that's item number 1, groceries on the lower level. No comma there, so that's fine. But I'm still using the semicolon because my item number 2 is using commas. Luggage, comma, housewares, comma, and electronics on the ground floor. All of that is item number 2. And in item number 2, I have a separate list itself. Those are the things on the ground floor. Because I used commas there, I have to break up, and my list is by level. Lower level, ground floor, second floor, third floor. I have to break those items, those floors, with semicolons. Next one, men's and women's clothing on the second floor, semicolon, and books, comma, music, comma, and stationery on the third floor. 2 items in my list use commas. The second one, luggage, housewares, and electronics on the ground floor, books, music, and stationery on the third floor. Because those items, and it would just take one item, even if one item had to use commas, the commas that break the things in the list have to be promoted, have to be bumped up to semicolons. Whew. Yes, I break the floor levels with semicolons because the things on those floors have been broken up with commas. I know it's kind of tough, isn't it? One last one. I talked about ellipses as a way to show an unfinished thought. You can actually use a semicolon in sentences like these. In 1992, Starbucks had under 200 stores. 10 years later, over 5,000. This first part is a complete sentence. The next part is not. It's not a complete sentence. I have omitted words, and usually I would use ellipses when I have omitted words. But here, because it's clearly understood that it's 10 years later from 1992, and 5,000 stores is in contrast to 200 stores, I can instead use a semicolon. And here I actually even used a comma. You can use semicolons and commas instead of ellipses to show that you've omitted words if the meaning is clear, if you are staying within one sentence on the same subject. So you can actually use it to shorten sentences. And this is a little harder, but good luck trying to use that. I don't write like this. I don't write sentences like this often. I've had very little call or need to. It's just something you can do with a semicolon. It's possible. Last one today, let's talk about the colon real quick, and then I gotta go. If you have an independent clause, and that independent clause sets up a list, use a colon between the independent clause and the list. For example, the school specializes in 3 subjects. That's an independent clause. We have the school subject, specializes verb, and before the list of 3 things, I use a colon. Art, architecture, and graphic design. And notice I broke the items in the list with commas, as normal, as usual. But between independent clause and a list, you need a colon. Between independent clauses, when the second explains the first. So you are restating the information or explaining the information in the first. I have very little time to learn the language, colon. My new job starts in 5 weeks. Could I use a semicolon here? Yes, of course. But if the second sentence is explicitly explaining the first, explicitly giving more information about the first, use a colon. Use a colon. Finally, emphasis. Well, not finally, but emphasis. After 3 weeks of deliberation, comma, the jury finally reached a verdict. What was that verdict? Guilty. So if you have a phrase or a word at the end of a sentence, and it gives emphasis to the sentence, it is the emphasis of your sentence, you can break with a colon. What was the verdict? Guilty. Instead of saying the jury reached a guilty verdict, you want to emphasize that word, guilty. It's very important to you in this sentence. Put it at the end and break it with a colon. Kind of a weird one too. Okay, here's, time and ratio. So 11:35 a.m., we'll get a colon between hour and minutes. or ratio 1 to 3. You will use a colon for ratios if you ever have to write a ratio in a report. And here's finally, in correspondence. Dear Mrs. Smith, to begin a letter, use a colon. Sometimes you have to write a memo, usually an email gives you the CC, the people you want to copy. CC, colon, Tom Smith. If you ever have to write this out or type it out in a memo or an invoice for business, you will use a colon. Same with this. This is memo as well. Attention, colon, accounts payable. That attention just means who it's to. And then at the end of a letter, if you ever write PS, PS colon, don't forget your money. So correspondence, when you write letters or memos, invoices, anything internal in a business or even external for a business, you often use colons to break your lines to show this is this line. Here's the greeting line. Here's the copy line. Here's the to line. Here's the postscript line, the PS line. So colons for the separate lines in correspondence. Carbon copy, good, Rosa. I didn't know that. That's where CC comes from. Carbon copy, in the old days of carbon copy, where you'd actually have paper that you could transfer onto another sheet of paper directly. Yeah. Whew, that was a lot of punctuation rules as well, and I had to go through a lot of the last ones very fast. So I hope you picked up some of them. Oh, good, Rosa, you're ready to try this out. The semicolon use for a list with internal commas. Where was that one? Yeah, the internal comma rule. Let's see, what do you have? I have visited Paris, France, Hong Kong, China, and of course, because it's your last item in the list, and Istanbul, Turkey. That is correct. That is correct. Because you've used commas to break city and country, you need to promote the commas that would normally break the items in your list. You need to push those up to semicolons. That is correct, Rosa. Good job. Do you need it between the last two? No. With this conjunction and to show the last two things in the list, no, you wouldn't necessarily need it. Would it be wrong? It wouldn't be wrong if you included it. In fact, it helps my eyes distinguish the things in the list. So as I look at that, I kind of like it. It makes the list more uniform and it makes that break more clear. But do you absolutely need it? No. Would I use it? Yes, I would use it. Yes, you may have to rewatch this because there are so many punctuation rules. We did not even... So we talked about commas 2 weeks before. We talked about more punctuation today. And there's even more punctuation we haven't covered. So I'll still have to do another future one on punctuation. How important is it? It's usually the difference in a letter grade. If you write a paper for a class and the punctuation is not very good, your punctuation use, your mechanical use is not very good, usually costs at least a letter grade. An A becomes a B becomes a C. If it's very, very terrible, if use is very, very terrible, it can drop at 2 letter grades. So slowly learn the punctuation rules. It's hard to know them all. I don't know them all. I attempt to use them as best as possible when I write. Sometimes I make mistakes too, and I have to go back and edit. But learn them slowly. Learn them slowly. Become more comfortable using the punctuation as you go, as you write along. And here are some rules. Here are a handful of rules I threw out at you. Yeah, what a burden, right? Those punctuation marks. But an important burden. So, have fun. Hopefully you have some time to do some writing this next week. Try to use punctuation. Try to vary your punctuation. Try some of these new sentence forms that happen when you use punctuation, like the colon. Again, you wouldn't use a lot. You wouldn't use any of these a lot, but in academic writing they become important. Maybe semicolon, you'll find yourself using more and more. I find the semicolon very useful in my writing. Anyway, try it. Try writing. Even if it's a correspondence, it's a letter to a friend, try to use punctuation even if you write out longhand on a sheet of paper, or if you're writing an email to a friend. Even if you have an informal relationship with that person, attempt to write formally to them using correct punctuation rules. See how that works. See if your friend thinks you're crazy because you're using so much punctuation. Anyway, have fun. Always practice your English. Never quit. Never quit trying. You're excellent. All your examples were excellent. Of course, I can't get to them all. There were so much. Even if you're late, of course, you can go back and watch the video again on the YouTube archives. And I'll share the class notes one more time, even if you were late. Those are the links to the class notes. Another good way to learn punctuation is to read. Read something in English. If it's been published, hopefully there has been an editor and they've corrected all the author's punctuation errors, and it's clean punctuation in the book or the magazine or the online article. Of course, you won't always see correct use of punctuation, especially on online articles. You might see a lot of mistakes. As you learn the rules, you will yourself be able to point out mistakes, especially on those online articles. A lot of mistakes. There's more being written than there is being edited. So look for mistakes as well as you read. Anyway, I gotta go. I'll be back next week. We have a class later today. If you guys can come to the class that's later today, and then Josh has a class tomorrow. In my experience, who is the person fastest to learn English, and how long does it take to learn English? Oh, how fast can a student go from very little English to becoming proficient or fluent in English? If a student is very, very dedicated, I think they wouldn't be the most proficient or the most fluent, but they could become comfortable using the language. I would say a year. Let's say somebody started January 1st. They studied every day. They were a very diligent student. They came in with very little information. They studied every day, including the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and they went all the way to the end of the year, to December 31st. January 1st to December 31st. Studied, practiced a language, any language, not just English, every day. I would say they would become pretty comfortable with the language and they'd be pretty good. Of course, that's hard. You need breaks. You need to give your brain breaks. You need to give your brain rest. So a year is kind of unrealistic. A year and a half, 2 years, depends on what kind of learner you are. But even though those time spans, I said a year and a half, 2 years, even that's a short amount of time. Think, to learn a language, 3 years, 4 years, to master a language, 10 years. There's so many rules to learn. Just keep on piling on the rules. Don't forget all the old ones. Keep on piling them on. Slowly grow your English knowledge. It will expand. The more you do it, the more it will expand. There are some times where it flattens out, where it plateaus and you feel like you're learning nothing new and you're not getting any better. That's normal with any skill, with playing an instrument, with construction, with learning a language. Any skill you practice and you learn more, you'll plateau. You'll hit these flat points where it feels like there's no progression. If you keep doing it, though, even though you're going flat, there will be gradual step-ups again. When you first start any skill, it's all improvement, it's all progress. You learn so much so fast because you don't know anything. And then it slows down after a while. Is that realistic? Can you learn a language in a year? A very, very driven, diligent person could. They probably still wouldn't master the language, but yeah, it's possible. It's possible. Hopefully, you will give yourself more time. Years. Think years. Think that it will take years to learn a language, any language. Give yourself time. Give yourself time, even if you feel like you don't have time, like you're trying to reach a certain goal, graduate school, or be able to apply to a school overseas. Still give yourself time. And don't give up. Never give up. You guys are very driven. If you come to a class like this, that you don't have to, if you volunteer yourself as a student to do things like this, to watch videos online, you have what it takes to learn a language. You have the right attitude, the right mindset, so you will do fine. You will do fine. Keep at it. I always encourage you. That's a good question. I don't know what level Kareem will be teaching level today. What level will Kareem teach? I don't know why that sentence is so hard. I don't know what level. Let's see if is there any information on the live page about Kareem? No. I don't know what level Kareem will teach. You'll have to tune in and find out. Tune in and find out. And then, yeah, we'll find out. Yeah, I'm talking about the new teacher who will teach later today. Same channel, same YouTube channel. And then stay tuned for Josh on Thursday and Sean on Friday. Okay, really, I gotta go. I've overstayed my welcome. I've made a long video. I gotta go now. It was wonderful seeing you all again in the chat room, even if it's just your name in a chat room. And I'll be here next week for more vocabulary. Then we'll do. Then we're gonna do phrasal verbs. And then maybe we'll return to punctuation. No, let's do citation after that. Then we'll return to punctuation. Okay. Again, I'll see you soon. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to our channel. Also, if you want the full experience of being a student in a Smrt Live class with things like homework and teacher feedback, follow the link and become a premium subscriber. Also, if you want to see more videos from this class, check out our playlist.